Now, another problem is that you do not want to stop watering during the night. Once you start freezing ice on the limbs, you must continue all the way until the daylight hours when the sun then thaws the ice off of the trees before you shut the water off. Because what happens when ice converts back to water? Just the opposite. Now it sucks heat out of the air and out of the limb and out of the bud or flower or small fruit. And as it sucks the heat from it, at that point it can freeze it. So you have to get that ice to all melt off before you shut your water down. Otherwise, you're going to put the process in reverse and actually create a refrigerator out there. Evaporative cooling takes place. Effectively, the heat of fusion goes in reverse, and now you are sucking heat from the plant and from the air to melt the ice. So you never let that process go in reverse. Now, heaven help you if your system breaks down in the middle of the night. Because now you got all that ice out there, and at 4 in the morning, the pump breaks down, and the system shuts down, and what happens? You turn into an ice box. And odds are you're going to lose your crop. So boy, you got to really have a system that's going to work.
So you continually add that water to create heat, even though
that's correct.
Frozen on that land?
As we continue to freeze more water, we generate more heat. So this is a continuous process throughout the whole cooling time frame that we're trying to maintain heat in the orchard.
Does that heat that you're creating, like more and more, does that melt the ice that you've already put on? Does it give up that much heat?
Well, as the day dawns and we start to get some radiant energy coming back into the system, then we'll start melting from the radiant energy, not necessarily from the water itself, even though the water obviously is above 32 degrees, and so it will start taking some of the heat from the temperature of the water itself to start the melting process sometimes. Now, there are places that are very fortunate. We have a cherry orchard out here by Loudon, has a 102-degree well that irrigates it. They can turn that frost protection system on, and they got the benefit of two things. They're getting the benefit of the conversion from the water freezing, and they're also getting the benefit of all of that heat that's in the water to begin with, that's transferring into the air. And in fact, it doesn't really ever freeze in that orchard. The water's so hot coming out of it that it never freezes during frost protection incidents. And that's pretty nice. And so they don't have to let it keep running late into the morning and put on all that extra water. Because now what are we doing? We're starting to flood the cotton picking ground. See, this is not a panacea, this frost protection gig with water. If we have to do this night after night after night, we start saturating the ground. Now we're putting the roots into some peril because now they're drowning. Go back to what we talked about with that maintaining field capacity. If we get beyond field capacity, we start creating a harmful environment for the roots. And we start saturating the ground. No air is getting in, no bacterial action. The roots are starved for air. They start to die if this goes on for too long. So you hope you don't have a whole lot of freezing incidents in a row. You hope that there's time for this thing to be drying out. Generally speaking, you don't have to do this too many nights a year. But I can remember times when they've had to run frost protection like 20 out of 30 nights in a given month. Yes, Bob?
You combine field stack heaters and wind machines?
The question is, can you combine these things? You can combine all three of them and work them. They're very compatible. You'll see lots of times where they'll run wind machines and run field stack heaters around the perimeter, simply around the perimeter. because that's where the most critical spot is usually in the field, is a certain side of the field. And so they'll, or maybe all the way around the field. If you're the only orchard in an area and you're surrounded by alfalfa fields and wheat and things like that, that the neighbors aren't heating over next to you, you know, those fields are not getting heated. You have to do special stuff around those perimeters to keep the heat up out there. So you'll see guys that'll perimeter their fields with stack heaters and then run wind machines. Now it's hard to run stack heaters and irrigation at the same time. They're somewhat incompatible. But it's not unlikely to be able to use irrigation and wind machines simultaneously. That could be done also, sure. So as it heats, that heat is trying to rise. So you turn on that wind machine to keep it pushed down into the canopy. Keep it in the area.